recently Mary Kramer wrote in her weekly editorial in Cranes about, it was a Wayne State University example that she used, but about when a civic public discourse or dialogue becomes uncivil, where it becomes about really having to make sure that your point is right, not being able to see the other side of it, very much extreme, one extreme or the other, becoming very uncivil, which happens a lot. It happens in government here, it happens in this instance with faculty and students. How do we get around that, and what's Leadership Detroit's role in being able to encourage a strong, informed, civic and civil dialogue?
Right. So I think our history is important, and I'm a huge believer in understanding how we got to the way we are. Now, I think that you need to take that history and you need to do something with it. You sort of need to move on, but the history is extremely important. And I really, and in Leadership Detroit, we really stress sort of understanding that history. And I do have a lot of those aha moments come from some of the historical decisions that were made, both statewide and nationally, about urban communities. So that's extremely important. There's no excuse for ignorance. So the ability that we're open to share knowledge, and the way that we can, as leaders in a leadership program, become resources for one another and trusted resources. One of the things that we find is a lot of people do want to ask those questions, whether they're with regard to race or ethnicity. They desperately want to ask the questions on whatever side of that issue you're on, but we don't have the trust relationships or the context to do that. Once you ask the question and the question's responded to in a trusting way, it can revolutionize the conversation. Mm-hmm. It makes the conversation very different. We do that in LD. We spend a lot of time with that. So we don't want to gloss that over, because the issues that impact the region are sometimes very personal, and they've impacted people in many different ways. And I think that's part of it too, is understanding that whether it's economics, whether it's sprawl, whether it's development, that different communities have been impacted in very real and different ways. And there are stories that go with the way they've been impacted. And you have to take the time to understand those stories and be able to listen to those stories. It's not always about your own script. We all have our own stories. But I think that you have to reflect on your own and say, well, how does that make me open to understanding other people's realities that are different? And so I think those are some of the ways that you can get through that civil discourse. And the other part of it is civic engagement. I mean, just lively civic engagement, whether it's running for office, voting, being part of participating, not just a window shopper, but really participating in that process.
Do you see that with the next generation of folks entering the workforce an increase, an uptake again in that civic engagement? We saw a decline, obviously.
Yeah, we did. I do. I think there's great potential. One of the things that I would really like to see, and I think we need to pay attention to, is if a new generation coming more civically engaged, how do they reach back? How do they reach back and bring others along with them? How do they reach back and bring folks who've been in this community for a long time? Are they willing to reach back and bring other folks along in that civic engagement process?